Ask you a little about, you always describe yourself as a writer. Even though you're an MC or producer, you've also said, I'm a writer, and the craft of what you do. I think, it's easy to get lost amongst, the records and the personality of the records and the mask and everything else. This craft of wordplay, of putting words together in an interesting way. Maybe using this song as an example. What, this song, for instance, you say things like groovy dude, not to prove or be rude, but this stuff is like what you might put on movie food. So obviously it rhymes, as most rap does, but how do you decide like when to say something by not saying something? If you know what I mean. You could say movie food,
Right. Yeah, I know what you mean.
but something you put on movie food, somebody, in a past era would say butter or whatever. It's a reference to something that's just a little bit off, one step to the left, maybe two. And I wonder if you might address that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, as I'm writing it, I'm also thinking of it from a listener point of view. So I try to make it to where I can catch myself off guard. Like you wanna keep the story interesting. Like soon as somebody thinks they know what you're gonna say, that's part of the essence of rhyming. Is to keep everybody kind of off guard a little. So I take that and I stretch it with these different things. Like leave one word blank. Knowing that the listener is following along and will fill in that blank, like how I'm following along and will fill in the blank. But always put the word that you would least expect, or what they think might be there is not there, but it still makes sense in another way. It keeps the story interesting. You know what I'm saying? Like where you can match wits with the. It's almost like keeping a good conversation with the listener, where you can match wits with them. It makes it more fun to me. So I try to keep it as entertaining for somebody else who will be listening to it down the line, even, and like it really puts a sense of longevity to the record as well, to where you never know what the dude's gonna say, so you want to hear it again and again, and then once you do get it, you want to pass it on to a friend. It's like a good book, you know what I'm saying? So and again, that's why I phrase it as a writer. Like I look at this, it means written. I got the notebooks to prove it. Man, it's a lot of writing, like more writing I thought that I'll ever be doing. You know what I'm saying? So, and it takes thought and a lot of like, it's not just put together loosely, like like a lot of you got novels that are put together loosely, and you got even got like tabloids opposed to like credible newspapers. You know what I mean? So in the same way, you got different hip hop, like in the sense of rhyming. That's some of it is just fun, like here and there thrown together,
Hmm.
not as crafty, I would say. And then you got the real crafty good stuff. So I try to make that quality good stuff. You know what I'm saying? Where you're gonna be like, wow, it's a classic book. You know what I'm saying? Well written. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And you did a whole album that we mentioned earlier, Food. Everything is a food title. Every subject is on the surface referencing food,
Right. Right.
but then songs are not necessarily about food. They might be
Right.
about something else.
Double entendres. Yeah. It's all in there. You know what I mean?
Um, I want to make sure we get time for questions. So open it up in a second. Around 2006 to the last album you did, there were moments when there was a certain amount of unpredictability. You were very prolific, but then um, there were there was also some inactivity. What was going on in that time?
I think it's more like, I was still doing work, but I kind of laid off it a little bit, just to concentrate on family and like other children on the way, and I just kind of took some time off really for family and like just to get away from it for a second. It started being like where I don't necessarily want to do one thing for too long. It gets to where it gets boring and kind of overwhelming, and you want to take a step back and just reflect. So it's really like that kind of thing. I didn't think it was that noticeable from the outside though. I figured it was enough work out there for people to still absorb, and you know, and it comes to a point where if I need to get more information as I study, and I got to do some like to give the affirmation I need information. So I would do things like just leave it alone for a second and just observe the world, and so I'll have more things to say. I think a lot of times people expect us to just be constantly talking. I'm the kind of cat, I'll lay back. You know what I mean? The conversation ain't always about what I gotta say. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes it's time to listen. So that was more like the listening time. You know what I mean?
I want to open things up for questions for folks, even though there's